Houston, coming up this hour. President Trump has said he plans to raise global tariffs from 10% to 15%. We'll discuss what this could mean with supply chain and logistics expert Margaret Kidd. I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also talk with University of Houston political science professor and party politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus, who will help us make sense of the races and propositions Houston area residents will be voting on.
Plus, Priya James, Associate Director of Community Engagement at NEDA Houston, will join us to tell us all about the National Eating Disorders Awareness Week.
And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org and clicking the purple box.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
An unusual quiet settled across snowy lower Manhattan this morning as travel restrictions were in effect. As NPR's Jasmine Gars tells us, a state of emergency was declared in New York and several other states because of a powerful nor'easter.
As of this morning, some parts of New York got over 22 inches of snow. The blizzard began on Sunday evening and has continued with strong gusts of wind of more than 35 miles per hour, making conditions even more difficult. New York officials say it could be one of the worst storms in the last 150 years. Hundreds of thousands of people across the Northeast are without power. Thousands of flights have been canceled. New Jersey, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and New York issued states of emergency and travel bans, urging residents to stay off the road and reminding people that these conditions can be deadly. Jasmine Gars, NPR News, New York.
Mexican authorities say they have killed the country's most powerful drug lord. The head of the Jalisco New Generation cartel died from injuries sustained in a firefight. NPR's Ada Peralta has more from Mexico City.
His name was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, but he was known as El Mencho. He was 59 years old, and within the past 10 years, this man allegedly built one of the most powerful organized crime groups in the world. He started in the western Mexican state of Jalisco, but he oversaw a massive violent expansion. So they are now operating from north to south and even internationally.
NPR's Ada Peralta reporting the drug lord's death Sunday led to violence across large parts of Mexico. Armed men torched government-run banks and gas stations, blocked roads, and set vehicles on fire. American businesses are puzzling over how they might get their money back for the tariffs they paid in the past year. This after the Supreme Court ruled Friday that about half of President Trump's tariffs were collected illegally. But the High Court did not set out a way for that money to be refunded. Here's NPR's Alina Saliuch.
Ask anyone who sells anything in the U.S. what's on their mind, and they'll probably say tariff refunds. The U.S. government has collected more than $200 billion in tariffs imposed by President Trump, but now the Supreme Court has struck down about half of them. Anyone who paid those tariffs should get their money back, and that anyone is often small business owners like Sarah Wells in Virginia. She sells backpacks and other products for new moms for breastfeeding. They're made overseas.
And we not only need the money back, but we need a process to get the money back,
which she hopes will not require hiring lawyers or brokers, extensive paperwork, or years-long litigation. Alina Saliuch, NPR News.
U.S. stocks are trading lower this hour. The Dow is down 1.5%. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. NASA says it's delaying the launch of the Artemis II mission at least another 2 weeks. That's due to several last-minute issues spotted by engineers that would prevent liftoff. 4 astronauts are preparing to be sent on a 10-day journey to the far side of the moon and back. However, further maintenance needs to be carried out due to an interruption in the flow of helium required for launch operations. Fires, explosions, and other accidents at Harris County industrial facilities released more than 49 million pounds of unauthorized air pollutants from 2017 through 2024. That's according to a new report from Air Alliance Houston. News 88.7's Anna Monroe reports. We are having some trouble with that audio. Anna Monroe reports.
The study looked at emission events when industrial facilities create additional air pollution due to accidents, maintenance, and other activities. Air Alliance Houston says 5 incidents caused more than half of the air pollution created during emission events. Dr. Inyang Uwak is a research and policy director for Air Alliance Houston.
Science has proven the impact of air pollution, right, on human health globally, not just in the U.S.
Air Alliance says that without stronger policy and more transparency, communities will continue to face a higher health risk. I'm Anna Monroe, News 88.7.
In sports, the number 13 Utah Jazz will visit the Toyota Center tonight to face the number 4 Houston Rockets, 8:30 tip-off time. Your check of weather, sunny and cool with a high of 62. Tonight, clear with a low around 42, and sunny and windy on Tuesday with a high of 71 degrees. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Good morning, Houston.
Good morning. Hello, Houston.
Hello.
I'm at the age now where I have to look back on my phone to see what I did over the weekend.
Did you go back and check? But, Frank, over the weekend, it was kind of warm, and then...
Yeah, then this front came through. Today's kind of cold. I got to wear my Christmas sweater.
I like it.
I'm so excited.
It's beautiful.
It's blue.
Yes.
My favorite color. Yeah, and today, if you're watching us on YouTube, welcome, YouTubers. What a blue sky. Look at that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And we're going to be a little cool today, highs in the low 60s, but then a warming trend and quiet skies all the way through for us.
Right.
New England will be digging out. They've had 27.5 inches of snow on Long Island.
Yeah.
I know. And about 15 in the city. And really 6 to 20 inches has been common right there from Delmarva all the way up to Boston and Connecticut. So it's been...
Do you think this is the last big one of the season?
Well, we always say that. It's the first big one in a long time for New York City itself. So likely, they don't usually get 2 of these in a season. But, more snow's possible. It's all about temperature.
It's all about temperature.
I know. So that, speaking of which, the temperature was hot down in Mexico. Cartels were burning things up in Guadalajara.
Yeah.
And Puerto Vallarta. We have a place there in Puerto Vallarta.
Yes.
And fortunately, it's fine. In fact, the cartels tended to stay away from hotels and condominiums. They went more for OXXOs, which are like 7-Elevens.
Yep.
They're owned by the state, and I think they were trying to make a point to the state. Of course, there were a lot of car fires and bus fires. Yeah. I've checked with some friends, and so like the clubs and the beaches and the hotels are, there's been some destruction, but not a lot. But it's going to take some rebuilding for sure.
And we will be talking about that in the second hour of Hello Houston. But today, coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to talk with Brandon Rottinghaus, professor of political science at the University of Houston, about the primary election. We are in it.
It's already in March, in like a...
That's
lamb.
next week.
March is going to be in like a lamb, not a lion. It doesn't look like.
It is going to be here, and we are in it as well. Coming up in the second hour, also, we're going to be talking about what's happening in Mexico, but also Representative James Tallarico is going to be joining us at the top of the hour.
He's going to be calling us next hour, and a personal friend of mine too, Ed Fingers, quite the photographer. I didn't even know his photography. It's always pretty on Facebook, but now it's become a show. And it's this week, and he's going to tell us all about that. So a lot of politics today, but some nice art, too.
Art and fun things.
The Barbara Jordan documentary, which is going to air on PBS. So we'll talk about that. Anyway, a lot going on. Hello, Houston. We're glad to be back.
Yes. Thanks for joining us. Today is February 23rd.
And no Ernie.
And Ernie's out today. I was out last. We were kind of just playing musical chairs, but We're back.
We're trying to get our act together.
We're trying. But moving into the headlines, President Trump says he plans to raise global tariffs from 10 to 15% just one day after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down his use of emergency power to impose them. In a 6-3 ruling, the court rejected the administration's reliance on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, dealing a setback to the president's trade agenda. President Trump responded by signing a proclamation for a temporary 10% tariff increase, citing the Trade Act of 1974. The tariffs would last up to 150 days. President Trump says tariffs will remain central to his economic policy, despite the legal challenges. And joining us now to break down what this actually means is Margaret Kidd, who's the Department Chair of Logistics and Supply Chain Management at San Jacinto College. Margaret, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Well, thank you, Celeste and Frank. Exciting to be here.
You know, I just got to ask you, right off the bat, what did the Supreme Court of the United States actually rule, and how big of a blow is this to the president's trade agenda?
Well, I mean, essentially on Friday, the Supreme Court came back and said that the president does not have an authority, the Constitution does, to set tariffs. And while that sounded like big news, and it is, he did turn around late Friday and filed an executive order to establish Section 122 tariffs, which will last 150 days. And it started out at 10%, and over the weekend it had escalated to 15%.
Wow.
So he still has legal authority to do something with tariffs.
Absolutely. He has a toolbox. The thing with the Section 122 tariffs is after 150 days, Congress has to get involved if they want to keep those in place. Now, I have to think with midterms coming up, that one's going to be a little bit of a stretch.
Right. But, again, looking at this from just a legal perspective, can the president actually pivot to go to the Trade Act of 1974? And exactly, is that vulnerable to change as well?
Well, there's certainly a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. Small and mid-sized businesses are absolutely bearing the brunt of this. They just don't have the deep pockets. But there's a number of tools, for instance, like the Section 301, which is more of an investigation to unfair trade practices. So even when this expires in 150 days, he has other options that he can move forward. So we've all experienced inflation in housing and clothing and cars and electronics. It's still here. It's not going away with this action.
And you said bearing the brunt. And I think that's the question that most Americans are asking and want to know. If tariffs rise to 10 to 15%, who feels it first? Is it going to be the consumer? Is it going to be a small business owner? Is it going to be the trading partners?
Well, definitely the consumers spend it. And I brought this study from the New York Federal Reserve. They completed this last year, and I'm going to I don't know that the camera can pick it up, but 90% of manufacturers and 75% of service firms paid tariffs on goods they brought in. 75% passed those along, and basically within the first 3 months, consumers were already paying higher tariffs. Sorry, that's reproduced from the Fed's report.
So cleaning this mess up, is anybody getting any money back? Because apparently the tariffs that were here for the last 9 months were not legal, and that money should be $175 billion, and that money should be given back to those who paid it. But according to Scott Bissett, it's not going to happen.
Well, consumers certainly aren't getting any money back, so let's just put that on the table.
Right.
Now, as far as businesses that paid these tariffs, this could be stuck in litigation for years. I mean, it's not going to happen automatically. It was not addressed in the Supreme Court ruling, which is interesting. And there was approximately $200 billion collected. So more than likely, it'll go to the Court of International Trade and then come back down to an appellate court. But again, this is a long-term proposition and no guarantees.
And then there are countries who have negotiated tariffs with Trump and say they negotiated 19, 20%. And now this ruling comes out and he has to switch over to a 15%. Do those countries get to go back and do a redo?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but it certainly puts some uncertainty into those trade deals. And we've already heard that China is balking about this, right?
Well, and
no
the market
surprise.
is too. Market's down big time today.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's status quo. The tariffs are there. It's just a new name.
Well, and as we look at this temporary 150-day tariff increase, how does it disrupt supply chain and, as Frank just mentioned, financial markets?
Well, it's the uncertainty, and then it's really, at the end of the day, companies are in the business to make a profit, and your margins are really squeezed when you have these tariffs. So, I mean, eventually, when a good becomes so expensive, consumers stop buying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's look at restaurants in Houston. It's a great example. When was the last time you went out to eat? Were you surprised at your bill at the end of the evening?
Mm-hmm.
Tariffs.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, and I mean, even salads, things like that.
Right. A pita. You're like,
well, and I've heard arguments to people that so much of our community is on GLP-1s that people now go out and split a lot of dinners. It's like, we'll just split a steak. We'll just split a chicken dish, So there's that too.
Outside factors. But, Margaret, I've got to wonder, what type of position does this put when we're looking at the relationships and diplomatic relationships when it comes to business with other countries? And when can other countries start to retaliate, and how quickly does that look like?
Well, there's without a doubt a whole geopolitical realignment. And there are a lot of other things that are occurring that are creating additional volatility. And we can look at what happened in South America a month ago and what's happening in the Middle East. So we're certainly living in interesting times, and it's challenging. It's very difficult to make long-term CapEx decisions, if you're building a new facility somewhere, or even OpEx decisions.
Right, and this is a broad term, but I just keep thinking that, we're getting very much into the minutiae and the details of tariffs of 10%, 15%. We're looking at the relationships between China or India, but the larger economic implication that this could have on our country, do you think it is going to be a short-term impact that we're feeling it now and eventually this will weigh? Or is this something that even after the president, let's say his term is up, we're still going to be dealing with this situation?
Well, we don't know what happens in elections down the road, but certainly if it's a short-term blip, there's some pain that we're experiencing. I brought another chart just to kind of give your viewers an idea about tariffs. And while they may be on the initial components, for instance, like with building products, you have both steel, aluminum, machinery that escalate the price of building. I mean, that's been a sector that's been hit really hard with tariffs.
Mm-hmm. Well, and people forget, it's as the products come into the country, that's where the tariffs are paid. Mm-hmm. And they're paid by the people who then sell those products to us. Mm-hmm. So we end up, they either eat the tariff cost and they don't pass on the upcharges, or they do pass them on, and that's why we see things going up, right?
Well, the majority are passing them on because, again, you're in business for profit.
We have to be.
Yeah, you have to be, right? So I think one sector that we're waiting to see what happens is pharmaceuticals. While there haven't been tariffs, there's been a threat of like a 250% tariff. What we did see last year is a rush of a bunch of pharmaceutical companies to onshore and commit to build some manufacturing here in the U.S.
Do you think that did Trump come out with his own sort of prescription?
Trump RX.
Yeah, Trump RX. Do you think that's why?
I don't know that that's why, but I think there's concerns. I mean, you just gave the example of Ozempic. People pay $1,000 a month for that. Imagine the cost with a 250% tariff if it wasn't manufactured here.
Well, there you have it.
So when we're looking at the ramifications of this for people here in Houston, I would imagine the person that's going to feel this most is a small business owner.
Small and mid-sized business owners, absolutely. They don't have the lines of credit. They don't have the staff to do alternative sourcing, and they just don't have the capital. And so the furniture sector is a great example where small and mid-sized businesses have been squeezed out. It's been very painful, the tariffs that we've seen in that sector. And let's just hope for the best that these tariffs maybe go away in the next couple of years.
Well, at the end of the day, the 15% global tariff, that's going to be it, right? I mean, there's not going to be some hidden 20% out there.
Well, there's no guarantees. From what we've seen this last 12 months in 2025 is there are a number of iterations of tariffs. From Liberation Day, where they're astronomically off the charts, to some more negotiated rates that were closer to 15-20%. I don't have a crystal ball.
Right. That's tough, right? And, I was just going to ask, I know you don't have a crystal ball. However, the president says tariffs will remain central to his economic policy. So he's basically saying, regardless of what the Supreme Court decided, I'm moving forward. What type of conversation would you imagine the president is having with his economic committee? I don't know.
Well, he's looking at
his advisors.
He's looking at these alternatives, these other statutes that he can use to tax. And so it's the Section 301. He's currently using the Section 122, and then there's the 232, which steel and aluminum fall under.
Why didn't he just go with these in the beginning? Because he wanted to just power grab and really crank these ridiculous tariffs up there?
Well, I can't answer that, but I think I think that it was strategically probably a strategic decision.
So if it was a strategic decision, do you think that it was basically he's coming in hard to put himself in a position for the U.S. to be able to negotiate?
Well, what I think is that COVID, there were some hard lessons learned that we're over-dependent in manufacturing in Asia, China in particular. Mm-hmm. And it really, in certain sectors and certain industries, became a national and economic security situation. And so that's why during the Biden administration, we saw the CHIPS Act. So we had, manufacturing kind of moving back onshore. With Trump, we've seen the pharmaceutical sector, again, be pretty aggressive in trying to bring some CapEx funds here. I mean, at the end of the day, not every industry is going to onshore, and it doesn't make economic sense. But I think it's a wake-up call. I mean, we do need to bring back some critical industries. I'm not one to make a judgment about how it's being implemented. It's been, a bit chaotic and unpredictable, especially if you're smaller, mid-sized business person.
Well, this may not be a question for you, so forgive me, but it seems to be a wake-up call to Trump that once these different executive orders get to the Supreme Court, you're not going to get away with all of them.
Well, it was interesting to see the alignment on the votes last week, and I think the Trump administration was surprised based on the news that we all read over the weekend.
Well,
right?
and then they're going to have to face him at the State of the Union address tomorrow night, because traditionally the Supreme Court's also right there in the front row.
It'll be interesting to watch. We'll all be tuned in.
Yeah, he wasn't very nice about them. I mean, he really was insulting.
And you can actually tune in to NPR tomorrow night to watch the State of the Union right here on News 88.7. But I did want to go back and ask you, Margaret, from your expertise and your vantage point, understanding supply chain and the industry, has there been anything that the president you feel like was surprisingly accurate, or actually maybe something went in the right direction when we're looking at this from a tariff perspective?
Well, on the overall tariffs, I can't really comment, but I do think that there was a strategy to attract some key industries. Mm-hmm. And I think that is occurring. But again, in an interconnected global economy, regardless if the manufacturing's occurring here, the raw materials component parts are coming from all over the world. Mm-hmm. If we take an automobile, which has over 25,000 parts, those are not all going to be sourced here, or a critical ingredient, right? So we are connected to other economies, and it's in our best interest to have positive trading relationships with our trading partners.
Well said.
And moving forward, what do you think is something that most people should be looking for in this next couple of days?
Well, I don't really see any big changes. The tariffs are still in place. I don't see that anything's going to escalate because I think based on current tariffs, that's built into pricing. I would be concerned if tariffs were escalated at a higher rate, like through a Section 301, which it could certainly be higher than 15%.
Wow. Margaret Kidd is the Department Chair of Logistics and Supply Chain Management at San Jacinto College. Margaret, thank you so much. It's always great to have you on Hello Houston.
Yep, nice to see you again.
Thank you, Celeste and Frank.
Coming up, we're going to talk with Brandon Rottinghaus, professor of political science at the University of Houston, about the primary election. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Meet Dio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
Companies or technology-enabled companies.
Listen to the TED Radio Hour from NPR every week for conversations that will deepen your understanding of our changing world.
The TED Radio Hour, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. on News 88.7.
This is Ernie Manous, and I'd like to invite you to check out the weekend edition of our show, Hello Houston.
This is Frank Billingsley. The best of Hello Houston is an hour-long show with our best interviews with newsmakers and conversations with you, Houston.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. On the best of Hello Houston, you'll also hear some of our signature features like my cold coffee segment and Ernie's interviews and Frank's Friends of Frank.
It's where Houston talks, now on the weekends.
It's the best of Hello Houston, Saturdays at 1 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from CertaPro Painters, offering residential and commercial painting services, from color consultations to full project management. Estimates and more at CertaPro.com. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
And support comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to handling claims to help injured workers get back to work. More at texasmutual.com/mutual care.
Support comes from Base Power. As hurricane season approaches, Base Power offers energy plans to Texans with home backup for outages and fixed energy rates. Eligibility details at basepowercompany.com/NPR.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celestia Sherman and Frank Billingsley.
All right, early voting for the March 3rd primary began last week and runs through February 27th. This year features several key local races, such as county judge in Harris, Fort Bend, Galveston, Montgomery counties, as well as statewide contests, including one of Texas' U.S. Senate seats. So to help us make sense of the races and propositions that Houston area residents will be voting on, we welcome Brandon Rottinghaus, professor of political science at the University of Houston and host of Party Politics. Brandon, welcome to Hello Houston. It sounds like you got to pack a lunch to get through this ballot.
You're definitely going to have to spend some time. Yes, bring an energy drink, bring something to snack on. Yeah, it's going to be a long one.
You know, Brandon, why do Texas primaries matter?
Yeah, it's a great question. The primaries matter in large part because this is the election that shapes the questions and nominees for who gets to be on the general election. And that means that effectively we're kind of winnowing through some of the questions and topics and candidates who are being considered for the next step. So this really does set up the kind of questions and candidates that are to be considered in the general election. So really it's a kind of pre-election, but in some cases it's almost like the real election because the way that the districts are drawn, the particular point of view and success that some candidates and parties have in particular counties means that whoever wins the primary is likely to win the general too. So it takes on added importance.
And how does turnout affect the primary? Because we see it's kind of a known fact that the March primaries usually have a very low turnout.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people don't participate. There are a lot of reasons for this. Obviously, primary politics tends to be staffed by those people who are the most committed, the most hardcore partisans, and most voters aren't in that category. The other is that more elections means just more work to be done. Like Frank said, the ballot's really long. You've got lots of candidates to research. The cost of voting, in effect, then is going up. So people just don't participate in significant ways. In fact, most primaries you see about 83 to 85% of the Texas electorate simply just doesn't vote. That number is obviously way too high. We'd like to get that down. But I will say in some elections like this one, you are seeing the turnout increase. And that does suggest that there's a kind of groundswell of support for candidates or for policies. And sometimes it just means people are downright mad and they want to see some change.
Yeah, well, I think the Senate race has lit a lot of fires. I mean, this is the most interesting Senate race we've seen in probably a very long time.
I think it's a great point. The fact that you're seeing this fireworks on both sides means that you're going to have a lot more engagement. You're definitely seeing that on the Democratic side of things. Normally, it's the case that Republicans outvote Democrats statewide, basically 2-1. In this case, it's almost even. And in some places, like Harris County, like Dallas County, you're seeing a real spike in support for Democrats. So whether it translates into the success for Democrats in the general election, we don't know. But for sure, there's been a lot more primary activity. And that means, I think, you're seeing people activated by what's going on in these campaigns.
And as Frank said, we're seeing obviously U.S. Senate, that's getting a lot of traction. But there's also some other major, statewide offices, including governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, which will all be on the March 3rd ballot. What can you tell us about those races and what you think people need to know about some of these other, maybe, I don't want to call them sleepers, but some of them that might feel like sleepers?
And while we're on that, we talked about a couple of weeks ago that you have to vote either Democrat or Republican, or I guess another party if another party is out there. So does that include the major state races?
Yeah, to answer your question fairly briefly, you have to pick a primary. Texas has open primaries in the sense that you can vote in either one without being a kind of quote unquote member of a party, but you've got to take your pick. So you can only vote for one slate and those candidates in running in those races. Now, in the general, it's different. Obviously, you can vote for whomever you want, but each of the parties will by then have a nominee that they've chosen for that office. So in that sense, too, you see kind of fewer people participating in primaries because they're really just not sure exactly who they like yet and wait to the general to kind of determine who they want to pick. But to Celeste's question, there are a lot of these issues and that a lot of these candidates that are really important. And this is something I think that we tend to forget. We tend to focus on these big hot button issues, right? The national Senate race here has implications for what goes on in the balance of power in DC, but the race for governor is equally important because the big policy issues like public education are definitely on the ballot. For lieutenant governor, that's an extremely important position. They have tremendous amount of authority at the legislative level in Texas, so that's a huge office. The controller is also another one. You've got a pretty pitched battle there for who's going to be basically watching the state's bank account and certifying the budget for the legislature, so that's been a pretty competitive race too. Another one we don't talk about enough is the attorney general's race. Really ugly politics happening in the Republican side of that race. The Democrats are also trying to face off and figure out who they think the best choice is to put the initiative for Democrats back into the attorney general's office. So just a lot of things happening at the very top of the ballot and all the way down the ballot. Lots of congressional offices. Here in Harris County, we're voting on some important positions when it comes to the position of county judge. Both Republicans and Democrats have got a pretty sizable set of candidates running that could very well change the course of how Harris County functions.
What's your take on the Al Green race and Chris Menefee? Chris has done very well in the polls, whereas Al Green is sort of the incumbent that's always on the ballot. So where do you think this will end up going?
Yeah, they have different styles. I think generally speaking, they both feel the same. They're going to both vote the same. But it's a question of emphasis. It's also a question of just tactics. I think Al Green certainly has been that kind of old guard, kind of protest to politics style movement. And, Christian Menefee is more willing to kind of work on the operational side of things, to pursue lawsuits that can tangibly get things done. The voters obviously are going to have to make pretty tough choices since they're both good candidates. But we're seeing a real generational change here. year. And I think that the degree to which Democrats are really anxious to find new leadership will be very telling in this race.
And that's interesting, right? Because as Houstonians, we basically had a front row seat to really understand how redistricting, changes and can force adjustments within the party within itself. And are there any other examples of, kind of what happened at District 18 in Texas that we should be watching?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And obviously, as you imply, redistricting, shuffled the table a bit and kind of, if you have a big collection of Legos, you kind of have it in a box and you shake it up and pour it all out. It's harder to see what the big picture looks like at the end. But if you've got a roadmap and you've got a little bit of guidance, you can find that way. And that's what we're hoping voters do. Unfortunately, a lot of these changes means that voters are sometimes going to be confused about where to vote and how to vote. But obviously, those changes can be undone if you've got a good roadmap, and there are a lot of great resources out there, including Hello Houston, to help us through. But on your point about the how this is sort of being seen generationally, one consequence of redistricting is that you do see this change often happen. The 29th district is a good example of that here in Houston. This is a district represented by an incumbent, Democrat, and is being challenged by Jarvis Johnson. So Sylvia Garcia is the incumbent, and Jarvis Johnson is running against her with the kind of expectation that because the district changed, then they should change representation too. We'll see how that plays out. We're also seeing this play out in North Texas. This is the 32nd Congressional District. Julie Johnson is the incumbent, and Colin Allred, who is running for Senate and who ran for Senate last cycle, is in that race, and that'll be a telling indicator of kind of where the Democratic Party is going. So there are all these races that are going to give us insight in terms of where the direction of the party goes and what kind of preferences voters have in terms of the kind of candidates they want to represent them.
Right. Now, Brandon, moving into policy issues and kind of voter priorities, what are some of the major policy issues driving voter interest that you all are seeing this season? Is it healthcare access? Oftentimes we know immigration is very top of mind. Is it education funding? What's kind of driving voters within this primary election?
Yeah, you've got your finger on the pulse, I think, of where the public is. They're definitely concerned about the bottom line. This is a pocketbook election, and that means that you're seeing voters really care about what's going to happen in those candidates' minds in terms of their policy preferences in affordability issues. It's been something that's driven more union officials to run. It's been driving that conversation about tariffs, which obviously the Supreme Court weighed in pretty significantly, and the president's going to have to talk about this week in the State of the Union. So there are definitely those issues, I think, that are most profound. And, we're used to seeing the incumbent party get a pretty good shellacking in a midterm. It's possible the Republicans could lose between 40 and 50 seats. If you just map out the number of those competitive seats, it's likely that they're going to take some big hits. And it's because of the economy, and the fact that the perception is that the administration didn't do enough to fix that is part of that story. But I think you're exactly right, too, beyond that these things are all interwoven with people's concerns about how international efforts are faring. There are definitely foreign policy questions that people are going to want to have answered in terms of what kind of resources are being spent on those things. Immigration is always a big issue. Border security was the number one issue in 24. It's still a huge issue, but definitely something that is modified and adapted a bit given the current circumstances.
Right. And, it's interesting that you mentioned affordability because, I never knew that our Texas Agricultural Commissioner, who is currently one of the seats that is on the ballot, is Sid Miller, and I interviewed him as well as his opponent Nate Sheets, and that's something that we discussed in ad nauseum about affordability and food affordability, and I don't realize that Texans can vote on that and understand that. And so it's like, as voters, we need to understand our district, what our district is, obviously the candidates, but also the issues.
I think that's great. No, totally. And the way that these candidates are positioning themselves in these races is oftentimes in a role of educating. They need to talk about what these offices do, what they can do, maybe what they're not doing if you're a challenger. So I think that's a great way to introduce people to government. That's why it's so important people understand the roles and functions of these different offices, because we should be holding them accountable for these things. And if we think they're not doing a good job, then we should definitely find somebody who we think can do a better job.
My British computer guy asked on YouTube, I'm curious to hear from Brandon if we're seeing any poll numbers yet.
There have been polling numbers in a bunch of races. Certainly in Harris County, we've got some pretty good polling that looks at some of the races and state of the races. It's worth keeping in mind that these polls are just snapshots. It's also really hard to poll in primaries. It's a challenge to get a sense of who's really going to come out to vote because, like I said earlier, the number of people who actually vote is pretty small. So we generally have better success polling in a general election, which means you're going to find a bit better of opportunity to kind of really get a sense of what people are after. We are seeing a lot of polling on the statewide Senate race. That's obviously become a national story. Like I said, this is a important position because the balance of power in the Senate is really in effect. There was a sense basically 2 years ago that the Republicans were going to hold the Senate and maybe even pick up seats. Now there's a chance that they might not hold the Senate. And if Texas flips, then you're definitely going to see a crack in that Republican armor, and it'll be an international story beyond that. So long story short, we're seeing a lot of polling from a lot of different places. I caution people not to look at any one poll as being definitive. This is a rolling average of polls that we should really care about because, like I said, every poll is really just giving us kind of one momentary snapshot of what's going on in the electorate.
We're speaking with Brandon Rottinghaus, professor of political science at the University of Houston, about the primary election. If you'd like to join the conversation, call or text us at 713-440-8870.
Now, Brandon, while national races aren't on this ballot, how do you think they, or lack thereof, essentially shape the Texas primaries? Do national political dynamics reflect kind of broader national partisan trends and frustrations when people are going to vote?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely see that happening, and certainly the kind of issues that are getting discussed are being indexed into the topics that the candidates are talking about here. Sometimes that can be successful, where if you're talking about something that's globally important, then definitely it's something that our national leaders should be having a conversation about. Affordability is a great example. Immigration is another one. The question about tariffs obviously is honed in this too. So there are a lot of things people should care about, but the real issue, I think, for most Texans is how does it affect them? So having the discussion be about these niche issues that are only of interest to DC politico types isn't going to help move the needle. And both parties have really struggled to find a way to balance this sort of support from their base who have very particular political perspectives and the kind of average, kind of voter who may not care about politics, but definitely cares about whether something is affordable and definitely is worried about the state of foreign policy and, worried about how the border is being secured. So there's a balance there that has to be met. And candidates are always striving to find that. I think one trend we're seeing the last couple cycles is that the candidates who've done better have been the ones who seem authentic and can really talk to people about their issues. That trend, I think, is worth getting back to because it is the cornerstone of how representation functions. We should expect these politicians to talk to us about the things that we're really concerned about, not the things that their party's concerned about or that people online are concerned about, the people who are really in kitchen tables around the corners, looking for ways to try to make life better. Those are the kind of politicians that need to be running and need to be talking about these things.
Speaking of affordability of the economy, I'm hearing that the State of the Union may really focus on economy, especially since not all the wars that we were promised would get fixed have been fixed. So what do you think about the State of the Union coming up and where the Supreme Court justice is going to sit?
This is a great point, Frank. I love the State of the Union. It's like our Super Bowl and the World Series, like all rolled up into one, and every celebrity comes to watch it. So yes, I think you're onto something there. The question about where the court's going to sit has long puzzled the observers of American politics. It always seems odd that the court comes to watch. Maybe this will be the last time, to be honest, that we see that happen, given that the friction is very real. So we'll see how that gets played out. And obviously the awkwardness can sometimes be fun to watch, like watching a reality TV show kind of spin off the rails. But I think President Trump for sure has got some objectives he's got to meet. He has to talk about affordability. It's the one liability that the Republicans have. He's got to talk about tariffs because think about this. What he's doing essentially is to evoke legislation that gives the president the power to be able to change tariffs for 150 days. Then Congress has to vote. So he's got to use this as a platform to talk a lot about what Congress can expect. He also needs to brag a bit about what the economy is doing that is successful, the parts that have been going well, especially some of the things Republicans want him to brag about with respect to the big, beautiful bill. So there are a lot of things he's got to accomplish in this speech. He's got to be on message. We know Trump has a tendency to kind of meander a little bit. Some of that is appealing to the base, but if he wants to really get a big swath of the American people back on his side, he's going to have to talk about those core issues and sell it well.
Brandon Rottinghaus is a professor of political science at the University of Houston and host of Party Politics. Brandon, thanks for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thanks, Celeste. Thanks, Frank.
Coming up, helping those with eating disorders. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Meet Gamola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Gamola to learn more about his ride.
It's an absolute struggle, and I will not lie, I regret doing it.
So how is the housing market affecting you? That's next time on The Middle.
You can listen to The Middle this Thursday at 8 p.m.
The Department of Homeland Security called it the largest immigration operation ever. Now that thousands of federal agents are leaving, how is Minnesota faring? We check in with the neighbors, school leaders, and small business owners keeping Minnesota running through ISIS operation. That's next time on 1A.
Listen to 1A. It's on today at 2 p.m. on News 88.7.
Houston Matters highlights the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. And we do it live on the air weekday mornings at 9 on News 88.7. But we know you're not always available then to listen. So subscribe to our podcast wherever you get yours, or find each day's program to stream online at your leisure at houstonpublicmedia.org. And reach out with questions or comments anytime. Email us at talk@houstonmatters.org.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, follow Houston's own Barbara Jordan, from congresswoman to national icon, with her powerful voice, integrity, and influence. Independent Lens presents The Inquisitor, tonight at 9 on TV8.
Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer.
And now back to Hello Houston. To get your comment in on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Celeste Diaz-Sherman and Frank Billingsley.
I do want to take a moment to mention our next segment may be triggering for some individuals, particularly those who've lived experience of eating disorders or body image concerns. The annual observance of National Eating Disorders Awareness Week, NEDA, highlights eating disorders' impact on individuals across the United States, particularly women and girls. This year's observance takes place from February 23rd to March 1st. Throughout the week, the Office on Women's Health, OWH, joins organizations, health professionals, and communities across the country to reduce stigma, support recovery, and connect individuals with helpful resources. This year's theme is Everybody Belongs. Joining us now to tell us more is NEDA's Houston representative, Priya James. Priya, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So for listeners who might not realize, how common are eating disorders still today in the United States? And I mentioned women and teenage girls, but this is something that can actually affect anyone.
Yes, and 30 million Americans suffer from an eating disorder. That's the number that we have right now, and it can affect anybody. Males are really affected too, and so it doesn't matter. They don't discriminate. It can affect anybody of any age, any nationality, any kind of background. and it's really scary. So,
well, when we think of eating disorders, I think we automatically kind of think of bulimia or anorexia, and we can certainly talk about those.
Yeah.
But on the other part of that scale, overeating
Yes.
is a disorder.
Yeah.
And a
Yes.
lot of people have the body image, they hate their body image, so they eat and they almost punish themselves. And there's a lot of psychology there. So is this, I'm guessing this today that we're talking about is for the whole spectrum?
It's for the whole spectrum. All week, we're just trying to bring awareness to all eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, ARFID. There's just so many different eating disorders out there, some that are not diagnosed officially yet. So,
And how early do you all usually start seeing issues? When do issues start?
they can start anywhere as like young as 6 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, there's there's a very well-known advocate who talks about how she would go to ballet class and people would make comments to her, and that's when she started noticing differences to her body and trying to, manipulate how she was acting because of this.
And that's the thing, right? So many, including myself, I think a lot of people think that eating disorders is something about vanity. But there's more to that, because a 6-year-old isn't going to necessarily be vain or think of
self-identity is not even there yet.
So what would you say is the biggest misconception that you want to clear up for people that don't know about eating disorders or understand them?
Yeah, it's a mental disorder, and a lot of times people don't understand that it is a mental disorder. Oftentimes it can be about vanity. Oftentimes it could be about perfection. People with trauma often deal with eating disorders. There's just a range of things that can cause eating disorders, and it's not just vanity. And again, it affects everybody.
And I would imagine some control.
Yes. There's a lot of control. So, when people who deal with anxiety or OCD, all of these things are co-occurring disorders that go along with eating disorders, and people don't often realize that.
Right.
I don't know if this is true. We have a YouTube comment from GT7 saying we had fewer eating disorders when our food was not ultra-processed. Do you ever make any connection to the foods we eat and eating disorders?
People have their own opinions, but I don't really think that has affected anything. But, I know diet culture definitely does, especially these days with online, like Facebook and Instagram and different filters people use. And, that has definitely been a huge effector.
And we know that social media affects disproportionately teenagers. And also, there is that, I mentioned that it doesn't just happen to women and teenage girls, but we also do see that women and teenage girls are disproportionately affected by this.
Yes.
Why?
I just think there's a lot of pressure when you're, a female to look a certain way, to be a certain way. I know, I have lived experience and I have relapsed a few times, and it was hard for me when I was pregnant with my child. And then post-pregnancy, people would just, knowing that I had an eating disorder, make comments, and they expect you to bounce back, especially now when you see people on TV bouncing back. In a week, there's so many expectations for women. But
Well, and I talk about the GLP-1 shots a lot because I think that they can do a lot for your cholesterol and your glucose as well as lose weight. But maybe on the downside of that is that people want to say to someone who's overweight, well, just take a shot. But it's not about just take a shot. It's about what's going on upstairs.
It is. And again, that goes back to how it's a mental disorder, and it's not just about taking a shot and losing weight. It's really something that's inside of you that you struggle with, and it's a disorder.
And it's a mental disorder, but it has long and short-term effects on your actual physical health.
It does.
What are some of those that people might not know?
For women, they lose their menstrual cycle. You get very tired. Your hair gets very brittle, low energy. It affects your heart a lot. There's lots of physical.
Yeah.
And I like the social media comment. And in fact, we've got someone from YouTube saying social media has made this so much worse for our children and adults. So how can a parent fight back to that social media problem?
I think it's just so hard because it's everywhere. So just monitor your children's Facebook, who they're talking to. There's a lot of bullying that goes on at schools too. So, be open with your child and, talk to them about what's going on and how people are talking at school.
And it's interesting. I'm a parent and I know other parents, and we use these broad stroke terms like monitor. No, that means literally pick up your kid's phone and click it and open it and say, let me see who you're talking to. Let
It's
me
your
see
account.
what you're
You're
looking.
paying for it, so
you're
right.
Because we have to protect and advocate for our children. But this year's theme is everybody belongs. What does that mean when we're looking at these particular terms?
When we picked that theme this year because there's a lot going on in this world right now, and we want to make sure that everybody's included. There's such a stigma out there about who actually suffers from eating disorders, and we want everybody to feel comfortable and welcome and know that they're supported no matter what they look like, what their background is, what part of the country they're in, what country they're in. So that's really important.
And I want to note that the emphasis is on the word body.
Yes.
Like every body, no matter what size body, belongs.
Yes.
So what's the jumping off point? It's easier for a parent to recognize something, but maybe you're a friend of someone that you think has an eating disorder. How do you approach someone?
You have to approach it very confidently and not be accusative, because if you go in like that, the person's already feeling ashamed about what they're going through. So you have to be like, I've noticed this, or I've noticed you've been missing lunch, or that you're more tired, and kind of just go at it like that and be very supportive, because they need to know that there's someone there to support them. And our website has toolkits for parents, for friends to use on how to, just kind of approach people that you think that have.
Great. What is the website?
It's nationaleatingdisorders.org.
And, we're talking about this, but there's also, when you say everybody belongs and you're sending that message, there's also a message of hope in that.
Yes.
What does recovery look like?
Recovery, first of all, it's not linear. People, and I can say that as someone who's had lived experience, I've gone up and down with recovery as well. So you can't expect everything to be perfect. It takes a lot, especially, I'm a mom and I'm around moms, and, I can go to dinner and people will be talking about their diets, or, I can't have dessert, or things like that. And it's very difficult when you're in recovery, but you got to stay strong. I've talked to my friends and been like, can we not talk about your diets and stuff like that, because it can be triggering for me. So
what are the biggest triggers, from experience?
I used to work in the fashion industry before I started with this, and just
well, you look great.
Thank you. Seeing people on TV and social media, all these celebrities, like you said, there are a lot of people on GLP-1s, and it's a distorted image. That's not what real life is, unfortunately. So that can be very triggering to people.
Yeah, and Ariana Grande and the Wicked crew, there was a whole thing about that.
Rail thin.
And people were saying that kind of rail thin image is back in style. And that's the problem, right? We look at women's bodies as a style. And it's like, no.
Yeah,
right.
it's natural. Women's bodies go through so many changes, and people know that, but then when you look at them, they just like forget about that. They expect you to look and act a certain way.
And what about somebody that might look healthy but is actually struggling? What would you want them to know?
That you're not alone out there. There's so many people out there that are suffering, and there's a whole community here to help you. So,
and where can they turn? You mentioned the website,
yes,
but you're also part of the Office on Women's Health, right? Okay. Nope. I thought that for some reason.
But to your point, what are you all doing in this next week? That we can all kind of grab onto.
Yeah. So if you go to our website, we have a schedule of events going on. There's lots of community events going on all over the nation. You can find those online. We have webinars going on online. We have eating disorders really affect athletes, professional elite athletes a lot, men and women. We have a webinar with a former Olympic boxer, a squash player. So it affects everybody. And it's good when people can see that this really affects everybody. Males, athletes, just a wide range of people. So we have lots of events going on throughout the week.
Wonderful.
Priya, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Houston. All right. Coming up, we're going to continue discussing today's top headlines. We'll also discuss many other things. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
At Marketplace, we help you understand what's going on in the economy and why. There is no topic too large or too small, whether it's the housing market, jobs, interest rates, even the prices we are paying at the grocery store. Our independent journalism is critical in helping you connect the dots and getting the context that you need. So, join me, Kai Risdal, every weekday on Marketplace.
Marketplace, weekdays at 6:30 p.m. on News 88.7.
On Fresh Air, you'll hear conversations with entertaining people like Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson.
I gave him one take, one sound, one voice, and that was it. Blah, 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 blah. And Matt, his eyebrows went up, his tongue came out of his mouth. He's like, oh my God, that's him, that's Bart, that's him. You got the part.
The most interesting people in show business tell their stories on Fresh Air.
Fresh Air, weekdays at 8 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to helping Texas communities and emphasizing safety. More at texasmutual.com/TexansGetIt.
A nice sunny day today. Will warm up to around 62. And tonight, clear skies, a low 42. Looking ahead to tomorrow, another sunny day with a high getting up to 71. It's 55. And this is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. There has been another arrest in the fallout of the Epstein investigation. Former British ambassador to the U.S., Peter Mandelson, has been arrested in London. Authorities detained him today on suspicion of misconduct in public office as part of an investigation into connections to the late convicted sex offender and financier. Same language police used to describe the arrest of King Charles' brother, the former Prince Andrew, 4 days ago, also in an Epstein-related investigation. Mandelson has not been accused of sexual misconduct. He did not immediately respond to NPR's phone calls. Tens of millions of people across the northeastern U.S. are under a blizzard warning today as an intense winter storm batters the region. Jeremy Siegel of member station GBH in Boston reports thousands of plow drivers, bus operators, and medical professionals are still braving the elements.
The message from city officials has been clear. Stay home if you can. But for essential workers at Boston Medical Center, like surgery resident Colton Yan, that's not an option. I found him trudging through the snow after finishing an overnight shift.
How would you describe walking home in this weather?
Cold and wet. But I guess part of the deal. We love what we do. So
the storm is snarling travel across the region. Streets are coated in snow, and airports spanning from Boston down to D.C. have canceled nearly all flights. For NPR News, I'm Jeremy Siegel in Boston.
The president of Mexico says security forces have cleared all highways and roads that drug gangs had blocked following yesterday's killing of a drug cartel leader. NPR's Carrie Kahn has the latest.
President Claudia Sheinbaum says practically all activities are back up and running following yesterday's military action that killed the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, Nemesio Siguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho. Mexico has been under intense pressure from the U.S. to crack down on drug kingpins. Major airlines canceled flights stranding travelers. The U.S. warned Americans in Mexico to shelter in place as gang members burned shops, cars, and battled police. Sheinbaum says the operation against El Mencho was conceived and executed only by Mexico.
No hay participación en la operación.
There was no participation in the operation by U.S. forces, she stressed, but added intelligence sharing always occurs. Carrie Kahn, NPR News.
On the eve of the State of the Union, U.S. stocks are trading sharply lower this hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average now down 750 points, or 1.5%, at 48,875. The S&P has fallen 74 points, more than 1%. The Nasdaq down 1.2%. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. Both United Airlines and Southwest Airlines canceled flights in and out of regions impacted by the cartel unrest in Mexico. This after a prominent drug cartel leader was killed. The cancellations include flights into and out of both Hobby and Bush airports. This is happening all over the country as well. Other airlines have posted advisories about traveling after the killing of a cartel leader. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo kicked off festivities this weekend with its annual Wine and Best Bites competition. News 88.7's Natalie Weber tells us more about the small businesses that participated this year.
Hundreds of Houstonians descended on NRG Center last night to sample food and wines. Tom Kilgore opened a winery in North Texas with his wife 2 years ago.
I think the Texas wine industry is really having a moment. I think we're starting to get some recognition that folks are kind of noticing us.
It's Kilgore's first year participating in the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo.
We've had the opportunity to go around and sample some wines and some foods. You couldn't have a better time than coming here. It's amazing.
The celebrations will continue this week with the rodeo's annual barbecue contest starting on Thursday. I'm Natalie Weber, News 88.7.
In sports, Houston faces off against the Utah Jazz tonight at 8:30 at the Toyota Center. See you there. Checking your weather, a cold front has hit the Houston area. Temperatures are only going to climb to 64 degrees later this afternoon. We'll have another cold night this evening with a low of 42 degrees. But we will start to warm up on Wednesday. That's when we reach a high close to 80 degrees again. No rain in the forecast in this stretch of cold weather. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for use in restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. This is NPR.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
We're back for a second hour of Hello Houston.
Thanks for joining us. It is February 23rd, 2026.
With beautiful skies. It's crisp and clear.
I was going to say, we're looking at our outside view right now and of downtown Houston. That looks vastly different from the photo that you just showed me.
Well, my friend Emma and Patrick live on Long Island.
Yeah.
And that's where they've had as much as 27 inches of snow.
Wow.
Now, she makes the point, it's beautiful as long as you stay inside.
Yeah, and don't lose power.
Well, they don't seem to lose power. I guess they have.
And they have internet.
They've already thunked that one through, right? So we're still struggling occasionally with that. But yeah, they're fine. If you look at I like to go to EarthCam. Mm-hmm. You can Google it. They have all four shots now, one from Connecticut, one from New Jersey, Times Square, and Mulberry Street in New York. And it really shows you what the Northeast is going through with the snow right now.
What can we expect right here?
62, 63 for a high today. But then we're in the 70s and 80s as we move through the week. So it's going to warm up. Another dry, cool front on Friday and a nice weekend. I mean, I know, dry.
Beautiful.
All the way through.
I like that weather. I'd like that to stay.
as I said last hour, March. You know the expression "in like a lion, out like a lamb." You don't know that?
I don't.
Where were you when I was in third grade?
Oh, well,
I know. So anyway, that's an old.
I was a twinkle in my mother's eye.
Exactly. A hope. So that's an old line, and it makes sense because we're still in that rough season before things begin to quiet down, because we have winter is losing its grip and spring is trying to come in. And when you have that juxtaposition, you're more likely to get strong storms like we had that moved through last weekend, right? Yeah. So it looks like it's going to be opposite, though. We're already past that.
Yeah, and the Lent season started, Ramadan started, so
I don't give anything up for that.
Moving in.
But I'm not a Catholic.
Well.
But perhaps you
there
did.
You go. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, we'll leave that there.
We'll leave that there. But again, we want to thank you for joining us, whether you're joining us on YouTube. Don't forget, you can also send us an email anytime during the show or off hours at talk@hellohouston.org. And be sure, if you're enjoying watching our show on YouTube, you can like and subscribe. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram as well, hellohouston.show. We put some fun stuff out there.
Absolutely. All right, coming up, it's going to be an interesting hour here. We're going to speak with filmmakers Angela Tucker and Tyrone Dixon about The Inquisitor, a documentary about the life and legacy of the ever-fascinating Barbara Jordan.
It's incredible.
Yeah, but first, some headlines.
Yes, schools, airports, businesses were closed in several Mexican states, and Mexican officials urged residents to stay indoors after violence erupted following the Mexican National Army's killing of cartel leader Nemesio Rubén Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho. Cervantes was the leader of the Jalisco New Generational cartel, accused of trafficking fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine into the U.S. He was killed in a shootout in Jalisco during the military operation to capture him. In response, cartel members blocked highways and set vehicles on fire. In Guadalajara, much of the city shut down as residents sheltered in place. What steps should authorities take now to prevent further violence, and how should the Mexican government really protect civilians from cartel and cartel violence? Now is the time to join us on Hello Houston, 713-440-8870.
Yeah, this went down yesterday, and there were a lot of car fires and bus fires.
You have a house in...
We have a condo.
In
it's a little one, a little kitchen and a little bedroom.
It's a little shack.
It's a little shack in paradise.
If you're listening on the radio, I did air quotes.
Yeah, and we've always loved Puerto Vallarta. We've been going there since 2000, and we've watched it grow as a tourist attraction.
Sure.
And it's, you get on Southwest, you're there in 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's easy to do. But all these flights have been canceled. What happened is El Mencho was apparently shot in Jalisco. He was being transported to Mexico City to be worked on medically, and he died on the way there. But he was shot by the Mexican army. So his team of the drug cartel wanted to make a point. I think they've made it. But their point was, hey, we're not going to put up with this. We need to do our business and do our thing. And you, the government, you do yours. But let's live together without being bothered.
Right.
Because if you bother us, we're going to bother you.
Right.
And I'm not coming down on any side one way or another. I will say that 90% of the guns in Mexico come from the United States. I'll say that. But they didn't kill anyone. I don't think they even hurt anyone. But they did light a lot of cars and buses on fire.
They definitely made a scene.
And a lot of stores. Yeah, they made it's a mess. So to get like the romantic zone in Puerto Vallarta cleaned up, it's going to take a while. But Mexican people are remarkably quick and resilient, especially when it has ever come to flooding and hurricanes and things that, when nature destroys parts of their city, they are on it to get it quickly cleaned up. So heart goes out to the innocent people down there. And of course, a lot of travelers are stuck. The airports were closed yesterday and they're closed again today. Hopefully they come back open tomorrow and they can get somewhat back to normal.
And it's very difficult, right? Because I think that a lot of people that don't necessarily live in a country that understand how the cartels and the government, it all culturally works together. And so whenever one tries to combat the other, you have a war.
Yeah, you do. You do.
And it makes it very difficult for the civilians.
Well, of course.
And so then it's finding that how do you implement law and rule and justice and also combat real crime, organized crime.
Yeah, and this particular cartel is probably the strongest one in Mexico.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just selling drugs. It was kidnappings were taking place. And
I will
a lot of laws being broken. I mean, you wouldn't want to cross them, that's for sure.
And I will say, President Trump really has been putting Claudia Sheinbaum, the Mexican president's feet to the fire, as in saying, you need to be addressing this.
Yes.
And it has been one of those things where he really has been, which I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that something has to be done because it really does affect Mexican nationals, and it affects culturally so many families in Mexico.
And what's happening seems to be directed straight to the government because they're burning a lot of the OXXO stores, which the government owns, like 7-Elevens. And they went after taxis and buses. They didn't, burn down condominiums and hotels where the tourists industry is. So I think they spared a lot of the restaurants. There were car fires in the Costco parking lot in PV, but not the Costco itself. Because there was a big rumor that they burned down Costco, which is, it's important to us. Yeah. You can imagine how important it is down there.
Right.
It's a big stronghold. But they left that alone in grocery stores as far as we could see. My friends that I have down there are basically saying we're fine. The cleanup's going to be a mess, and we'll get to it. But we just hope that things have quieted down, the point's been made, and we go back to life as normal. But if you have an active fight with the cartels, they're not going to go back to normal very soon.
No. And again, 713-440-8870. We would like to know, do you have family down in Jalisco, in the Guadalajara area, and in Puerto Vallarta? And what steps should authorities take now to prevent further violence? And how should the Mexican government help protect civilians from cartel violence? 713-440-8870.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. It's going to be a real challenge for Sheinbaum, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But hopefully she'll get on it.
You know what? It'll leave it up to a woman.
Oh, always.
Leave it up to a woman.
Remember when Sally Field said if women ran the world, there wouldn't be any wars? She dropped an expletive before the word wars.
Yeah, exactly.
But she's right. Women know how to figure these things out a lot better.
And it does. It is, again, we oftentimes look at things from a policy perspective here from the U.S. and we look at geopolitics and things. But when you look at specifically this situation happening in Mexico and the way the cartels have run that country for a very long time, it's going to be ugly. But I'm hoping that there will be some hope for Mexican nationals.
We shall see.
And we do have a call. We're going to stand by for that. Again, 713-440-8870. You're listening to Hello Houston. We want to thank you for joining us, whether it's on YouTube or you're listening to us on your radio or on your computer.
Okay, we'll get that call through. We'll go back to it. You may have heard that President Donald Trump said Thursday he's directing the Pentagon and other government agencies to release files related to extraterrestrials and UFOs because of, quote, tremendous interest. I know. We can see if you can really fly with an alien on your bicycle.
Well, it's interesting. Tremendous interest. Where there was also tremendous interest was the Epstein files, and those have been released.
He didn't release those quite quickly, did he?
No.
That's a good point. All right, here's that call we were waiting for on the cartels. Jackie from Southwest Houston on the line. Jackie, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm wondering what it's going to take to get the Mexican government in shape altogether, just so that they can run the country legally and morally and not the cartel.
Well, I don't have the answer to that. I think that they have a pretty good leader in Sheinbaum. And they've been given this directive from Trump that the cartels need to be taken care of. And it sounds like that's what was happening. But that obviously has consequences. And it has consequences for the people that are standing by innocently and have nothing to do with it. And just,
And it's so, I think what it is that it's so deeply ingrained, and it's very layered. It's not just, the cartel's this big bad wolf and here's the government. And no, it really is something that's been happening for decades, that's been going on. It's almost a way of life. There is a lot of exchange of not just crime, but money at hand of, I scratch your back, you scratch my back, it's very relational, it's very complex. And yeah, it's going to be very difficult for the Mexican government to fully draw a hard line. Claudia Sheinbaum is not the first president to try. There have been other presidents who have tried and have failed because the stronghold and the amount of money that is being exchanged at every level, every political level, from your local government all the way up, is been happening again for decades.
Well, and to quote the Bible, before you start criticizing your neighbor's backyard, get the log out of your own eye, right?
Yeah.
So we have issues too that we need to take care of.
Yes, right. But we're not talking about that. I mean, we're specifically talking about the Mexican government right now.
Right. And I appreciate Jackie saying, when are they going to get it together? But it's, we have a few things to get together too.
And let's go to Guang from Bel Air. Guang, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment or question?
So you guys are talking about the situation in Mexico and stuff like that, and I have an economics, political science background. It's very simple. It's the demand for narcotics in the United States of America and so forth. That's what's causing all the problems in basically Mexico and the rest of Latin America and so forth. These cartels wouldn't be there if it wasn't the huge market for narcotics in the United States of America. So when people talk about the drug issues in Latin America and Mexico, they don't realize that, we're actually the focal point of it. We're the reason that there is problems there. That's all.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a very good point.
Guang brings up, I think, an argument that has been brought up for as well decades. It's a supply and demand. It's simple economics 101. As he mentioned, there is a very, very, very high demand here in the U.S. And so as long as people want illegal drugs, Latin American countries will supply them.
Yeah, that's as old as dirt, I'm afraid.
And we did get a text. This is Jen in Clear Lake, and there is a rumor that a Colombian cartel is involved in the fighting in Mexico right now against the Jalisco New Generation.
Well, that's a rumor, and so I don't know how to pursue that.
Yeah.
But
and again, 713-440-8870. Let's go to Thomas from Montgomery. Thomas, welcome to Hello Houston.
Yeah, I think the Mexican government should take a stand and go after these cartels big time. I mean, don't just kill the head guy, kill all the small fry as well. If you got 150 or 300 members of this cartel, kill them all. Line them up against the wall and take them out. I mean, who's important, the government or drug dealers?
Thomas, I wish it was simply that easy, but I think unfortunately, again, it's very complex and layered, and there's a lot of players. Like you said, there is just, we often go for the top, but it's very layered, and it goes all the way down even to the local town. There was an interesting comment that we received on YouTube. Chef Rob said, once your shop has been burned down 2 to 3 times, you pay the protection or you go out of business. And I think that is a great point in that people start to say, well, hey, if the government isn't going to help me, I'm going to have to basically side with people that will. And even if those people are not good.
Well,
I know that's a very, very rudimentary way of saying it, but, it's a difficult situation.
Well, yes, Chef Rob says issue bounties from the top to the bottom. When you say that, they're to the local level. I mean, you can pass people on the street, and they'll offer you cocaine and marijuana, or ask if you want to buy it.
Really?
Oh yeah, just walking down the street, and you just say no gracias.
No gracias.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going. But it's not uncommon for young men to make that offer.
Right.
And of course, they get their drugs from higher up. So when you say it's multi-layered, it's multi-layered all the way to the local people.
The local people, and it's also one of those things where the chief of police knows who the players are, and the police officers know who the players are, and they're all. It's a web, and it's very, very intertwined.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the chief of police in Cancun was beheaded.
Yes.
By the cartels at one point, not so many years ago.
And
so they can get very violent.
You've had local, you constantly see it. Journalists are murdered at one of the highest rates in Mexico. You look at, mayors in towns have been killed. There have been council members, have stepped out and said, I'm not going to, bend the knee to the local cartels, and in a week they're gone.
Wow.
And that is very real. We have a call from Jose from Clear Lake. Jose, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment or question today?
The comment was one comment and one error correction.
Yes.
Comment is that we forget that the supply of guns that is in the hands of all the mafia behind the drugs come from the U.S. As long as the U.S. has a free supply of guns for them, it's a battle that the government will never win. They are always outgunned. So let's keep that in mind. And second, there's a mistake in your report. You said that OXXO belongs to the government. That's not true. It belongs to Grupo Alfa out of Monterrey. It's a private company, totally private.
OXXOs.
OXXO.
Aren't some of them part of Pemex and part of the gas stations there?
No, OXXO has gas stations, but the OXXO belongs to a private group.
So why would they go after the OXXOs then? Because they burned a number of them.
OXXO's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's the main supply of food, particularly in poor communities. So it's the largest chain that I can imagine for Mexico. So they're right there. They're visible, and they are at the gas station. So you can imagine how much more risk there is to have any destruction of the OXXO. But OXXO is a private company. They have a partnership with the oil company, but it's totally different.
Okay. Thank you for the information for sure. This is an interesting YouTube comment from Sean Radigan. The last caller, I don't think he means the caller before, but one of the last callers is greatly underestimating the difficulty of eradicating the cartels. They have their own cell phone networks and armies. It's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, 713-440-8870. We want to thank you for listening to Hello Houston. And this is an interesting conversation. We're going to continue to monitor what's happening as well as keep everybody informed.
We have one more call from Will. We'll try to get that in right now from A-Leaf. Will, what's on your mind?
I feel like part of the issue really is the narcotics demand in the United States. And I think we really don't talk enough about how I feel like if we could treat it almost as a legitimate business in the United States, like deregulate or decriminalize these drugs, I mean, that would really just get rid of a lot of the demand for these cartels and stuff. If we could have this production totally stateside, because narcotics demand is never going to go away and people are always going to use drugs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, as Celeste said, the supply and demand.
Yeah, I mean, we've had I think there's been a lot of this is a conversation that has been happening for years.
Oh yeah,
right.
Decades.
I mean, decades.
This new generation came about 2010, so they've been around for 15, 16 years, and was a breakoff from the cartel Sinaloa group.
Sinaloa, right?
I know you know how to pronounce it better than me.
Sinaloa. Yes, no, and it's interesting though, because what we are seeing is that at least again, President Trump is really holding Claudia Sheinbaum, her feet to the fire, and saying this has got to stop. Now, right, there is also the point of supply and demand. We need to look at our own country, what's happening here. We are the consumers of the product. However, as we had Jose point out, you have pointed out, we also supply guns to the cartels.
90% of their guns.
There's also that added layer. We're simply talking about the exchange of narcotics. However, there's also firearms involved. There's also a lot of times human trafficking is involved in these type situations, and also business. There's a lot of exchange of money that goes through all avenues between these levels of cartels, and it is a very complex situation. But again, we're going to continue to discuss it and monitor, and we want to thank you for joining us on Hello Houston. But coming up on Hello Houston, we'll speak with filmmaker Angela Tucker and Tyrone Dixon about The Inquisitor, a documentary about the life and legacy of Barbara Jordan. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
We
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
7.
I'm Stephen Dubner, host of Freakonomics Radio. Every week, Freakonomics Radio explores the hidden side of, well, everything. From the economics of sleep to when is the best time to rob a bank. So tune in next time on Freakonomics Radio.
Freakonomics, Mondays at 10 p.m. on News 88.7.
On Fresh Air, you'll hear from people who really make you think, like astrophysicist Brian Greene explaining the scientific theory that our universe is just one of many.
And the image that I like to have in mind is, imagine that our universe is like one slice of bread in a much grander cosmic loaf, with the other slices of bread being other universes.
No subject is too big for Fresh Air. Join us.
Fresh Air, weekdays at 8 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support comes from Rice University's Master of Interdisciplinary Studies, a program for working adults designed to strengthen communication and critical thinking skills within a community of diverse learners. Details at gls.rice.edu. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro Fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celestia Sherman and Frank Billingsley.
The Inquisitor is a documentary that tells the story of Barbara Jordan, the groundbreaking Texas congresswoman whose sharp intellect and moral clarity transformed U.S. politics. The documentary premieres today on PBS Channel 8. And joining us to tell us more about the film and the life and legacy of Barbara Jordan is the director, Angela Tucker, and executive producer and TSU film professor, Tyrone Dixon. Angela and Tyrone, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
We're delighted. Tell us first, where did you get your source material? I mean, there's a lot out there. You had to focus in on something, I'm sure.
Yeah, what inspired you all to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I am born and raised in New York City, so I am not like Tyrone, whereas Barbara Jordan was everywhere and a part of my DNA. I had to be exposed to her, and I found her incredible Watergate speech, the archival of that. And, once you see that, you think somebody's got to make a documentary about this person. Mm-hmm. And that's really how it got started, was just seeing that piece and kind of moving forward with that.
So like news reports that were on film or home movies, how did you put all this together? Where'd you get it from?
Well, I think, one of the things that we were able to do, just a quick story, Angela and her producing team were creating a documentary about Barbara Jordan, and so was I, but from the perspective of being a professor at Texas Southern University, having grown up in Houston and all of that, and serendipitously, we connected and shared resources, and this is how we came to be a team. And I think one of the things that we were able to bring, we're very proud of that, is TSU was able to share the archives of Barbara Jordan, which is housed at Texas Southern University, as well as Dr. Freeman, whose archives had a number of pieces that helped Angela carve a beautiful film together.
It's so interesting, right, that this film is coming out at such a pivotal time right now for District 18, when we saw essentially the redistricting making national news of this seat that's been held by Mickey Leland, Craig Washington, Sheila Jackson Lee, Sylvester Turner, and to see essentially Barbara Jordan back
in headlines and that we're discussing her legacy, to me, doesn't feel accidental. Talk to us about essentially the process that y'all went through and understanding what was happening then and how y'all are making that connection to now.
Yeah, I mean, the film is really about the cyclical nature of history, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as much as it tells Barbara's story and is, a form of biography about Barbara's life, so many things that happened in her life really affect things that are happening now.
Yeah.
So in that way, the film is evergreen. When you look at her with impeachment hearings, when you look at Voting Rights Act, with redistricting, when you look at immigration, all of these things are things that she was kind of dealing with directly and are things that we're dealing with right now. So it's kind of by design in a way that the film is about that. But also we really wanted to keep the film set in Barbara's time.
Yeah.
And then leave it to the audience to make the connections.
She had more than chutzpah. She had guts. She was something.
Yeah.
She was an incredible woman. And I think the film actually demonstrates, where that came from. Her connectedness to Fifth Ward and the people of the city of Houston, and as well as her learning and spending her time at Texas Southern University, helped to carve out, I think, a platform for Barbara to become who she became. And for me to have been raised in Houston, Texas, to attend Texas Southern University, spend time in Fifth Ward, hear her name all the time, and then to have an opportunity to make a movie about her has been a dream come true. She is truly an icon. There's no doubt about it.
And Tyrone, as we're discussing her legacy, how did she change the way Americans view leadership and connecting leadership and integrity in public office?
I think for me, it was the way she walked and, no pun intended, the way she talked. I mean, she backed her words up. She was focused on the Constitution. And I think that if we all kind of learn something from Barbara, that there is a focal point that we can really, obtain to start to look out from. And that helps us to deal with other people and other situations around us from my perspective. And I think what Angela did so eloquently was to share Barbara's life and how she was able to come to the voice that became, I think, so many people say the voice of God, but the voice of so many people who are out there fighting to protect the Constitution.
And in this film, do you all highlight essentially how she navigated being a Texan, being a Houstonian, and then rising in such a prominent way to being a national political figure? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, her story is exceptional because she, went to TSU. She was on the debate team and, and had her sort of incredible beginnings there and in Houston. But her being in law school at Boston University and, being one of very, very few Black people there and, what her family had to do to really make that happen. I always remind people of the time. I mean, we're talking, she's the 30s, the 40s. This is a very long time ago that this woman was able to move up the way she was able to move up. And a lot of it has to do with her intellect and her ability to communicate with people. And then her early days, in the Texas State Senate, she did a lot of campaigning for Kennedy, and I think that really gave her a presence. A lot of people think that she was really responsible for Kennedy getting Texas, and that's how she got to know LBJ. So, she just kind of kept at it. She ran for office many times and lost. And so I'm always just blown away by how much strength and confidence it took for her to get to where she got to.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on her personal life because you mentioned in some of your trailers that she had to negotiate through life itself and in having a long-time female companion. So there's a part of her life that she wanted to keep rather private, but then became this huge public figure. How much does your documentary touch on that? And Nancy Earl.
Yeah, we sadly we weren't able to interview Nancy Earl, but or Barbara Jordan for that matter, but it was really important to me to show Barbara as a really complete person. And what I mean by that is not only was she this incredible political figure, but she also was a person who was loved by many people and had, a really rich, full life. And so that was very crucial for us to show. We do get into it somewhat, and and I'm really grateful for all of the, her friends and family who could kind of provide a portrait of her life with Nancy. And we are really lucky that we were able to get some archival footage because, Barbara loved to throw a party. And we have some amazing archival footage of one of Barbara's parties, and you can see her singing at the party. And so it's just our way of wanting to paint a fuller picture of an incredible woman.
Yeah, that's lovely.
I have to ask, Tyrone, do you think that Barbara Jordan's style of leadership would be possible in today's kind of media environment? Do you think she would have that traction today?
I do. What do you think?
I most definitely. I think she would be more prominent now than she was then. I think we all still are amazed by the things she say and the way she says it. And I just feel like she would command the moment and could play a major role in, changing things and making things better in a way. And that's why I think this film is so timely. We need to know that there was someone like Barbara who we all respected. And you just spoke about, her, and Nancy. And I think the one thing about Houstonians and the people of Texas, we love Barbara. We understood what her role was. And there was just a whole lot of respect laid out there. And I think that same thing would exist today, but even in a more prolific way, because, social media was around when she was around. That just meant that more people would get a chance to hear her voice and to hear her commitment and her dedication to the Constitution, that they too might soak that in and have the same energy and vibe. And so I just think it is so timely now that this PBS is putting this film out. I'm so proud of Angela and Moira and Trevitt, for taking the time. I don't know if you guys know, it's been 5 years or so, getting this project done.
Oh, wow.
And, all of the challenges that came with it for, just a few days after Barbara's birthday, as Black History Month, we're getting to, celebrate her. And I think this is amazing. And thank you, for allowing us to be here to speak about it.
Oh, absolutely. And I do have to ask, it's interesting, Tyrone, you talk about challenges. So, Angela, I'm curious, on making the documentary, what type of challenges did you face when you were trying to tell this story and bringing it to the screen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of people who know and love Barbara. So you just have the initial challenge of trying to make something that does her justice, which is, one, not a small problem, but a problem nevertheless, and making sure that we really communicated with the different people in her life who, she was a woman who really compartmentalized her life. There are people in Houston who feel a lot of connection to her. There are people in Austin who feel a lot of ownership of her as well. So communicating with all of those people and making sure that they have a voice and that they're happy with the film. And that also, we're just very fortunate to have the film be on PBS on Independent Lens. PBS has really taken a hit financially, as we all know. And for them to still really support the film and push the film with community screenings, in addition to, it'll be streaming, it'll be on your local PBS station. We have been very, very fortunate to have partners with them, to have them know and appreciate and love the film. So, I mean, there were some challenges, but we're just so blessed to have the film have the kind of the large platform that it does.
What's the running time on the film?
It's 84 minutes.
Wow, that's about perfect for a documentary, I think.
I'm glad you think that.
hour and a half. You get, some are really short, and you feel like you didn't get really into it as much as you could, and then some go on and on and on. So I think that's excellent. And it premieres tonight on PBS.
Yes, it's on PBS's Independent Lens. So I know you, I forget which station it is locally here in Houston,
Channel
but
8.
if you're seeing, yeah, but it's on you can find it in your local listings.
And I do want to ask, how did you approach balancing essentially historical context with personal narrative?
Well, I would say that it's really important to, one, focus on moments in her personal life that made her the figure that she is, right? That made her kind of the political figure that she is. So, we of course had to focus on her being on the debate team, and we of course had to focus on her kind of moving up in law school. But once she becomes a political figure, you then just have to decide her kind of moments of visibility that are most key. And there are kind of some realities too around archival footage. When you make a documentary about someone who's no longer with us, you do have to think about what can you show. There's a section where she testified in the Robert Bork hearings, and that is probably a moment that was significant, but not one of her most significant achievements. But the archival footage is so incredible, and watching her have a back and forth with someone, and then have her kind of Republican counterparts talk about how much they miss her in office, which is something that, we would probably never see now. So that was footage that it was really important to feature. And so you just kind of go with what you have access to and what are kind of the moments that best highlight Barbara in a meaningful way.
I have to ask, if Barbara Jordan were to actually watch this documentary, what would you hope she would say?
I would hope that she would say that she loved it, but that she wasn't really like that. So I would hope that she would say that it was fair.
Right. I knew you were going to say that. Yep.
Yeah, that it was fair. I that's what I would like.
As fairness does have to do.
I wish she would just say, you didn't have enough of me singing and playing the guitar.
That's great. I can't wait to see it.
Angela Tucker and Tyrone Dixon are the director and filmmakers of the Inquisitor documentary about the life and legacy of Barbara Jordan. Thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston. The Inquisitor premieres tonight on PBS Channel 8.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, the photography of Edward Finger. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Do we need to use this word citizen all the time?
Why we welcome some immigrants and shun others, and how citizenship affects blended families. That's next time on Think.
You can listen to Think. It's on tonight at 10 o'clock.
That car loan interest you're paying, you can take it off your taxes this year.
That money burns a hole in people's pocket, especially those people that have been holding off. But, you get an extra $2,000, $3,000. Oh, there's my down payment. Now I can get an affordable payment.
I'm Kai Rizdal. It is tax time, gang. Next time on Marketplace.
You can listen to Marketplace tonight at 6:30 on News 88.7.
This week on This American Life, Edward Dando was a man in 19th century England who would walk into oyster restaurants.
And he would order dozens of oysters at a time, like 200, 300 oysters at a time.
And then, when the bill arrived,
Edward Dando would swear to God he thought it was free. He claimed in court not to know how restaurants work.
That's this week.
You can hear that Wednesday night at 9.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe. R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul. Music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
Support comes from San Jacinto College Foundation, presenting Couture for a Cause, an evening of celebrating fashion and philanthropy to benefit the promise at Sanjack Scholarship, Friday, April 24th, 6 p.m. Details at sanjack.edu/gala.
And now back to Hello Houston. To get your comment in on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Celeste Diaz-Sherman and Frank Billingsley.
Ed Finger is a Houston-based photographer with backgrounds in environmental science, geography, and education, whose work is influenced by his fascination with the natural world. Additionally, Ed is a seasoned traveler that's been to 95, he can't even remember, 94, 95, something like that, 95 countries or more, where he's captured an immense number of images on both a grand and intimate scale. And later this week, photographs from Ed's many, many travels will be featured in the exhibition Beyond My Eyes. He joins us now to tell us more about his work and this upcoming photography show. Ed, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you Thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much.
And for much of your career, you were a science teacher, which I love.
I was.
And you would go to these places, take pictures, and bring them back and show your class.
I did that for both my earth science classes and specifically world geography classes. Yeah, I mean, you can, teach out of a textbook and, say, memorize this line, but when you show a student an actual photo, a place that you've been to, and you can tell them true stories about the culture of a place, I mean, that really hits home.
Have you always loved to travel? Was this something that your parents did, or was it something as an adult that you decided you wanted to do?
It was both. I had a map, a world map in my room growing up next to my bed. And I was always fascinated by the continents and the locations of countries. And when I saw a country with an exotic name, that was like, ooh, I want to go there. Yeah. That's really cool. And, I have been so fortunate in my life to travel to many places and some really cool places. And when I'm in a new place, I feel alive. I get excited. Yeah. Whether that's talking to a person or seeing a new landscape or talking to a group of people. And, in terms of photography, sometimes I'll, see a moment where, okay, I want to capture that image. Yeah. And that image turns into more of a feeling.
Sure.
I kind of compare it to that scene in Mary Poppins, when they're at the park and they're looking at birds' watercolors and Mary Poppins says, 1, 2, 3, jump. And they're all of a sudden into that magical kingdom. So, when a viewer looks at, one of my photographs, I hope that they can get, a sense of that magic.
Sure.
So what made you think, this is something I should show everyone? Let's have an Ed Finger photography show.
Oh my, it was never about exhibition or recognition. Over the years, folks said, Ed, what are you going to do with your photos? I'm like, well, photography is just a hobby of mine, and it still is. Mm-hmm. And then, I finally decided to take the leap and show a few photos. And I got connected with Barbara Davis Gallery here in Houston, and here we go. It's going to be a learning experience, but I'm very, very excited about the opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about the feeling of, wanting to go on these adventures and things. Did you ever feel scared? Where, there is that element of going to a new place that you've never been. You've been to a lot of very different countries, as in sometimes they don't speak the same language.
Like most times.
Right. So,
and you're a bit of a solo traveler often.
Right. And these were remote areas is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Right. So, yes, I mean, there is that, intimidation. I find that, honestly, you just have to kind of go out, conquer your fears, be confident, go up to people, be kind. That says a lot when you're traveling. But, I've always been kind of an independent person, and I love traveling, with friends. But when you do travel by yourself, you beat your own rhythm.
Yeah.
And it's just a totally different way. And I enjoy it very much.
So I got to ask, 95 countries. Do you have a favorite place you've been?
Just what I was going to ask.
I don't want to offend anybody already. It's very difficult. I default to, it's so hard. Southeast Asia is pretty special.
Yeah.
Pretty special, from the food to the people to the landscape. That's wonderful. But then, I could, name 10 different places right now. And sometimes I keep going back to the same place because I love it so much.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is there somewhere that you have done and we're a one and done? We're not going back there. Or is that asking you to insult something?
I don't want to insult anybody.
I agree.
I have had a couple of places where I'm very grateful for the opportunity, but I probably will not revisit. I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
So when you go to, take me back to like, when was your first international travel? I'm trying to get a number of how many years to go to 95 countries.
So I'm going to credit this to my high school history teacher at Episcopal, Alice Davidson. She took a group of kids to Hong Kong. It was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year. And when I arrived in Hong Kong, this was something totally new. I had been to Canada and Mexico, places close by, which are phenomenal. But when I landed in Hong Kong and I saw the lights and I got off the plane and we started walking the streets, I said, whoa, this is a different place. This is exotic. And I just felt this energy that I had never felt before. And so that was definitely the catalyst. So I must give Alice Davidson credit for that.
Yes.
She corrupted me, but in the best way ever.
So then how many countries a year do you try to visit? Or do you set a goal like that? Or you just go when you feel like going?
I really don't, set a goal. If I have the opportunity to travel somewhere new, if I have the time, I'll jump on it. Absolutely. And, I wish I could go everywhere. Even some of the countries, right now that are a no-no, those places still have incredible culture, incredible history that I hope someday will allow visitors.
So I'm not even a good cell phone photographer, So how do you decide the composition and the light and the object? How do you do that?
Yeah, I don't have a real science behind it necessarily, but if I'm in a situation, whether I'm in a car or on a bike or walking by, and something catches my eye, and I say, okay, that's unique, and it could be a person, it could be a group of people, it could be a landscape, it could be light, color, it could be a weather element of weather. I think to myself, that could be a shot right there, and so I'll capture the image. Now, whether it's good or not, I can decide later. But I go through all my photos, and that's kind of like in terms of like the title of my show, Beyond My Eyes, because if I do see an image, or I do say, okay, this is a photograph I want to portray, I want the viewer to see beyond that, to see all the elements that I chose and why I decided to make that photo one of the spotlight.
Okay, I have a YouTube question: Canon or Nikon? It's not my question. They are.
They
showing
didn't say cell phone.
they are showing some of your beautiful photographs on our YouTube channel.
I'm honored for that. Thank you.
Just looking at the one of the Eiffel Tower where you just show the bottom of it, and everybody knows what it is. But you don't show the whole Eiffel Tower by any means, which is what I would do. I would put the whole thing in there because I'm not a photographer.
To answer your question about the camera, I do shoot with a Canon. In terms of the Eiffel Tower, that was actually taken with my cell phone.
Really?
It was. And, you see a million shots of the Eiffel Tower, but rarely do you see, certain architectural views or angles. And that was early one morning. I'm walking by, and I just said, that's a cool shot.
Well, we're looking at one, I guess, in Africa of a baby lion and his mom.
I think I titled that photo, Feed Me, Mom.
Feed me. Just don't feed me, Ed.
Exactly. I'm going to stay in the car.
Exactly.
But no, this little lion cub, he was with his mother, just feed me.
I need something. You're in charge of it.
That gazelle over there looks pretty good.
Okay, so more about how you really want the viewers of your photographs at this exhibition, because you told me you sent her about 200 photos and you don't even know what she's going to pick to show.
I've seen a couple, but
generally it's almost going to be a pleasant surprise to you when you see the photographs in the Beyond My Eyes exhibition.
Sure.
So what am I supposed to look for when I see this exhibition?
So I purposely did not want to choose the photos. That would be very difficult for me. So I wanted a foreign eye to look at these photos and, an artistic eye and say, hey, this is, maybe what the viewer wants to see. When I take a photo or I decide to spotlight that photo, I want the viewer to develop the feeling that I got behind the image. I can picture any or show any photograph of a mountain or a group of people, but there's certain photographs that I literally have an emotional connection with, and I develop feelings for, and so that's what I hope the viewer will see.
So what's the nuts and bolts of this? When can we go? Where do we go? What times?
So it's at Barbara Davis Gallery, and
where is that?
Barbara Davis Gallery is 4411 Montrose.
Okay.
And the photos will be on display tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday from 1 to 5 p.m.
Okay, perfect. 1 to 5. Free admission, I'm guessing. Just go
free
in
admission.
and look at these. Are they for
Check 'em out.
sale? Can someone get a print of these, or are we just looking and going?
They are for sale, but for the display, it's going to be just viewing only.
Just viewing only.
Just viewing only this week.
So what's the next country on your list? Do you have one yet?
There's so many. I think Ethiopia, Madagascar, and Nepal are very high on my list.
Yeah, never been?
Never been.
Because I just saw you at Antarctica like a month ago.
I was in Antarctica. Not only was I in Antarctica, but had the opportunity to go all the way to the South Pole.
Wow.
Which was unbelievable.
I
Definitely
bet.
one of the highlights of my life.
Okay, you're going to need an entire book. not just a show. Ed Finger, Beyond My Eyes will be on view right on tomorrow, Friday.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. At the Barbara Davis Gallery. That's on Montrose. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Keep clicking away.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you all for joining us on Hello Houston today. That brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for watching and listening, and we will be back tomorrow with more conversations. We'll also talk with New York Times bestselling children's book author Meg Medina. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride